photon to explain one
connection.
indivisible unit of light. Where is quantum existing? Yeah, you're on
For
that quantum
example,
connection. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think
no,
there's one
I
hell.
can't tell if did anybody else here die slow like cut out a little bit and then it seems a little bit off, or is it me that's lagging? Somebody
Yeah,
else
I'm
confirm?
one hell of a delay between you guys.
Yeah, but there's no delay between us though, so it must be him then.
It's possible.
Well, since we can't have it's probably is my connection, so I'll just say my point on my response to that. I would say that I think that is a pretty minute part of quantum mechanics. It's a very mysterious part of quantum mechanics, the double slit experiment. It's not just based on light. We put mercury and we heat it up into a gas in light bulbs that we call CFL bulbs. And then we know quantum mechanics well enough to know quantized energy states of electrons in atom orbitals. And so we know what type of light wave we're expecting when we excite an electron in an atom, in a mercury atom. And so that's why we know the exact temperature that light bulb is going to emit. So it's a bunch of stuff within quantum mechanics, and it's not all based on uncertainty principle.
So prior to the double slit experiment, can you give me a citation of quantum being, even just the word quantum being used in science?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure I can find some. It's used a lot. Quantum just means
Yeah, look for it.
that we
See what you find.
quantize things.
Yeah, I understand. It's the amount of something.
No, it's
I
to be able
understand
to
what the
determine
word means.
discrete
The point
steps.
I'm making.
It's to be like the most minuscule step not being continuous. Whatever we can determine as fixed discrete step points is what we call quantizing something, like making it into things, right? And the smallest we can go, we call that the mechanics of the quantized tiny world, and so that's quantum mechanics.
Okay, well, I don't think you're addressing my point. I don't know, maybe you didn't hear it.
But you're saying there's nothing quantum in physics before the double slit experiment? I can't really, I don't know dates off the top of my head, but pretty sure the photoelectric effect was a known thing before we did the double slit experiment. That part is just understanding the particle wave duality and what that is.
Well, there is no duality in nature. That's just a misunderstanding. There's no such thing as nature dealing in dualities. And prior to the dual slit experiment, quantum wasn't even a thing. And in regards to the photoelectric effect, again, can you give me a citation prior to the double slit experiment using quantum in anything?
Well, photoelectric effect is strictly quantum. We explain it in terms of electron ejections and being able to pick those up. That is very much quantum mechanics. We have the atomic, like the Bohr
Absolutely
model.
not.
I'm pretty sure that's way before.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, Hertz was the one who discovered the photoelectric effect, and he was accurate in his explanation. Even though Einstein was the fourth person to talk about it and gained a Nobel Prize award for doing so, he didn't address what was taking place within the photoelectric effect. In fact, Hertz was the only one who gave the accurate explanation as to what's taking place.
That's not true at all. But Einstein's explanation is still what we know.
Yeah, well, Einstein was wrong about it. Hertz, being the one who discovered it and explained it, was actually the one who was accurate.
Well, it was discovered. I mean, this is still before the double slit experiment, though.
I just looked it up. It looks like
it has to do with the red and blue end spectrum of light being uniquely different from one another, having to do with threshold capacitance. Oh, really? So why is it that the Crookes radiometer will spin up? Why is it that the Crookes radiometer will spin up when exposed to blue light instead of red light?
That is not strictly tied to the photoelectric effect. The photoelectric effect is that we know that electrons can sit on certain energy states around a nucleus and that they don't flow continuously between them. So that if you can shoot the right amount of energy at an atom, you expect to push an electron up and it will go back down to its ground state, and then it will emit an electromagnetic wave. And it would only ever do that at those specific energy states. That was observed.
When you say energy, what are you referring to?
Well, in this term, you're shooting energy. You can shoot straight electrons, or you can just use light energy. You can use light, or you can use electrons directly, but that would be a little bit of a different part. But you can use light to do this.
So what do you define energy?
What do you mean define energy?
You're saying that you're equating energy to electrons. Electrons don't exist. I don't. All right, dude. I can't do this with you, bro. You have fun.
Yeah, a light wave would be a form of energy. Are you saying light doesn't have energy?
Yeah, he bounced.
Usually how it goes.
Well, I mean, I just looked up, what year was the double slit. Google claims it was in 1801. Then I looked up, when was quantum science introduced, and it claims 1925. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yes, but what that refers to is more experiments based on that double slit experiment. That was very early, yeah. But having quantum be part of physics and having the Bohr model and all these different things that we quantize ways in physics we didn't start quantum mechanics after the double slit experiment only. We had discussed electrons and particles so much before that, which is why they even wanted to do these experiments to begin with. Physics has always been about going smaller and smaller on certain substrates.
Well, I mean, I don't really believe most of this shit that they try to fucking sell on a molecular level. Because whenever I do go to research fucking actual pictures of the shit, all I get is fucking cartoons. Yeah, real weird.
There are some electron microscope images, but I mean, we know. So you don't believe in protein, biochemical, amino acids being bonded together with something we call peptide bonds, and then that's a polypeptide chain, and then it folds 4 times, and then we call that a protein, that type of stuff, for example. Do you think that's all BS as well?
I don't know. What I'm referring to is shit like H2O, and it shows you, show me a picture of H2O and you get nothing but fucking cartoons. Yeah, I'm not gonna fucking believe that shit, dude. I've already been tricked by cartoons my whole life.
But I see what you're saying. I mean, you only see animations or illustrations of what it might look like, and you don't actually get a picture of the H2O molecule itself. So you never know in that case. But the funny part is when I studied biochem, whatever constitutes H2O and its structure and whatever we are shown would also make, if it worked any other way to form as something other than that molecule, we also wouldn't have the logical chain for the protein folding, what they are made out of, what phosphate groups are, what nitrogen bases are. Everything also seems to kind of fall into a nice homogeneous picture that just works. So if you know what H2 is, you probably can build up a molecule with just the math of how these things bond together and stuff.
But once again, you have to ask yourself, some questions. One of them being, how do they isolate, the H's and the O's, and how did they, they're not able to do that. You can't isolate an H and an H and an O.
You can.
You can,
That's how
huh?
we make it. Yeah, that's why we have different octave levels when we buy gasoline. Those are carbon and hydrogen chains. So imagine a long chain of C's, that would be the carbon, and then a shell of H's around it, that would be the hydrogen shell around it. That's a carbon chain. And if it's 4 carbons in the middle, we call it butane. We call it methane if it's 1 carbon, ethane. And then if we add an OL group or an OH group to the end of it, then all the chemical names have to end with ol. So then we get ethanol, methanol, and then we get propanol, we get butanol, and everything is very coherent in this picture. And so we can kind of pick and choose.
Right. Yeah. So you say that you can isolate the H's and O's. Show me an isolated H if you don't care. Go on.
Yeah, we can. That's what when you feel something sour.
I didn't say talk. I said show me a picture of an isolated H. So that means what you need to do right now, fella, is get on your little internet and type in, show me an isolated H.
Why can't you do that then? If I have to type something, why can't you type it yourself?
Because I've done and tried it, and it ain't fucking possible, and yet you're claiming it is.
So you're trying to trick me?
And I want you to eat crow instead of just parroting bullshit that you read from your fucking college book.
Listen, it is a very coherent picture, and a free H, that is when you feel something sour on your tongue. We know what an acid is. It is when you emit free hydrogen ions. We know perfectly well. You can have that, yes.
I'm still waiting for the isolated H picture. Not an image, but an actual picture. You said that they could do it with
you need a visual representation of everything that you build knowledge upon?
Yeah, and this is why Dicelo bounced out. Because he caught you in a trap, and you just try to squirm your fucking way out of it. I still haven't seen a fucking isolated H yet in the fucking text chat. Why is that? Maybe it's because
they use
bullshit out your ass.
Wait, I can give you one. Okay, let's calm down.
Show me an isolated H, and then show me another isolated H, and then show me an isolated O, and then show me them fucking bonding to make a fucking water. Okay?
Oh, you want me to wait? You're not expecting it to actually look like an H, right?
That's the fucking claim. That's what the cartoon proposes.
Let's move on. I'm done with this. This is the guy who talks about, you can't own land or whatever. I'm not talking with him. Move on.
Good. Bye, Felicia. Go to Omni's. Go to your little Glober Cope chamber where they just parrot nonsense and cheerlead for each other to make each other feel good. Go on, Felicia. Go on.
You are the equivalent of a child who doesn't want to understand something, putting their ears in there or half in their ears going.
Well, now you lied. You said you was done. Yet you're not done because you're still bumping your
I'm
nose.
not discussing it because you clearly are just being like arguing in bad faith when you say when I picture an H. Are you telling me you can't understand H standing for hydrogen?
Yeah, I'm not the one arguing in bad faith. You're the one that claimed the fucking, I can isolate an H. And then whenever I ask for a fucking picture, not an image, of this isolated H that you say that you didn't, that's been done before, you still haven't presented jack fucking shit in the fucking chat. And we all know why. Anybody that fucking has the
we all know why, because you can't have an isolated H, bro.
Yeah, thank you for the interruption. Anybody that has the slightest fucking bit of discernment knows why you haven't presented that picture yet in the fucking chat. And yet you want to declare that I'm asking shit and asking these questions and exposing you in bad faith.
Yeah, I do think everybody in here knows why I haven't given you a picture of an actual H being a hydrogen molecule in nature, because they're not shaped like an H, Matthias.
I didn't say that they were shaped like an H. Now did I?
You said
That is not what I said.
Yeah, I asked you. Everybody in here heard me.
Which is called a hydrogen atom, right? I didn't say an isolated H that's shaped like an H. I never did say that. You did just now.
Everybody heard me clarify that with you. I said, you're not seriously saying that you mean it's an H, right? And then you said, that's what you guys fucking claim. So that's kind of you confirming that's what you meant.
Well, yeah, hydrogen atom. And that's why I don't believe in atoms. You know, you can almost read the fucking cartoons that was shown to you ever since fucking kindergarten all you want. But real motherfuckers aren't going to just blindly accept that bullshit. Especially whenever they actually do the research. Thank you for the interruption again. Whenever they do actually do the research and finally, and all they get is fucking cartoon. You know, and science community, in order to make a science, you know, have you ever heard the expression, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence? Yeah, that's an extraordinary claim to have a fucking cartoon of two H's and an O bonded together with fucking lines somehow, but yet nobody's fucking ever seen it. Yeah, that's an extraordinary claim without any fucking evidence.
Hold on, you said that did I buy something you didn't? What did I buy that you didn't?
You bought the whole H2O fucking bullshit and you still believe in it. Yet still haven't presented.
We didn't buy the same thing.
Hydrogen atom. Show me an isolated hydrogen atom for fuck's sake.
Okay, you can't hold on. Okay, you've been talking and complaining about interruptions forever. Let me respond. Hold on. Just let me respond. Okay, you've been screaming for a bit. Okay, and he's gone. Well, that's what happens when you have no logical argument and you know that you're in the wrong and you just want to close your ears and eyes.
You haven't shown a logical argument.
No, okay, so if he never let me respond, but maybe I can say real quick now. When he said, you bought what they told you and I didn't, like, he was never presented the option to buy what I bought because he's never done the education path or understanding any of what he's talking about. And when I talked about it, so I didn't buy anything that he didn't because he's never even had the chance to buy it. That's what I wanted to know. And it does make sense if you actually study it. It's not just indoctrination.
H is a symbol for the male. O is a symbol for the feminine. So H2O means that water is influenced by two male sources and one female source. Water is an exchanger of energy, of information. When it becomes H2O2, structured water, the fourth source is back, the feminine mother. That's my vision.
Okay, the hydrogen and the oxygen are female and male, and they make a connection.
I'm not saying that they are hydrogen and oxygen. I'm saying they are symbols for their vibration put into the water. Whatever it
Rocket. Are you a relativist, Rocket?
Am I a relativist? Were you asking me that?
Yes.
Were you talking any type of relativity? Or just
well, I mean, it's special. Yeah, are you a special relativity guy or a general relativity guy?
I believe both are pretty good frameworks for what we see, but I don't think they're fully fleshed out for what they could or should be. It's just the best that we've done.
Yeah, they're completely incompatible. You know, it's kind of a one or the other type of deal, if it even was one or the other, which I don't think it is, but you know.
Yeah, it's called the search for the theory of everything, or a unification theory. That's what we're
searching. which ether already solves, you know, but
no, it doesn't.
Sure it does.
How do you explain time dilation in the ether?
Well, that's a fallacy. Time dilation isn't real, bud. It's not a real fact.
Is real. We discussed this yesterday. Were you here yesterday?
I think I might have caught a little bit of that, yeah.
Well, the reason we know time dilation is true without having to do extreme speed experiments is muons. And since they reach from the upper part of the atmosphere to the ground in 2.2 microseconds, that is an impossible speed at their given energy and speed at that time. And then somebody said, "Oh, you can't measure that? That's theoretical." That's also not theoretical. You can energize and create muons and scatter them in, like, I think 2 different types of detectors that are pretty reliable. And so you know that muons, you can prove it with them. They're such low energy and so tiny. They travel so quickly that we notice their time dilation greatly.
I don't dispute a detected phenomenon. I would dispute its interpretation. That's what I would say. So, like, whether or not you're detecting something, yeah, I totally believe that that's going on. It's just the interpretation of how that's happening and why. You know, that is not.
I said by mistake, so I can't. I didn't hear if the start of your response or anything. I'm sorry. I just turned back in.
I I have days that go by in a flash, and I have days that look like ages, and that's the only relativity that I accept. It's metaphysical, not physical.
So, Rocket, are you like aware of? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to ask you if you were aware of exactly why special and general relativity are incompatible.
Well, what we'd really want ultimately is a quantization of gravity.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. In one of those, gravity is an emergent property, and the other one, it's an actual force. And so, of course, you can't have
Yeah.
both of those things at the same time. So, yeah, correct.
Yeah, it's a very difficult problem, and it seems nobody's really close to understanding it. So obviously, yeah, it's totally.
Yep, I believe it's. Yep, it's general relativity in which gravity is an emergent property from the bending and warping of space-time, and then in special relativity, it's just a force. A force, mass attracts mass.
Yeah, in some type of way. It's not clear that it would be 100% that way, but yeah, we still need a quantum explanation of it. Yeah. It's far from having that.
Yeah, so things like say quantum entanglement. You believe in that phenomenon?
I believe that we can know and make sense of what quantum entanglement is, and I think it has been demonstrated in some photon experiments in quantum computers. So I think I probably would believe in it.
Okay, yeah, and again, the same thing for me. Like, I don't dispute the phenomenon. I just dispute its interpretation. So within my paradigm, because I believe in an ether, things like the spooky action at a distance, aka quantum entanglement. If the two particles are within the same field, then all the spooky is gone. It's perfectly explainable if we're within one continuous field. And that same idea can explain a lot of things that relativity, it's paradoxical in relativity. This goes all the way back to Newton. Newton even talked about, masses acting upon one another without the mediation of something else. So the idea of a background medium, regardless of what you attach it to, goes back a long ways.
Yeah, but I understand, like, if everything is one medium, you can make sense of quantum entanglement more. But the problem is when you think of quantum entanglements and not the ether, it's very easy to get lost in the idea that they call it like whatever you say, spooky action at a distance. But it's not really that in quantum field theory, it is part of one field. Like it's an oscillation between, for light, for example, the magnetic and the electric field, right? At certain frequencies making different colors of light. And that would be one thing, one medium. And you would have multiple different types of fields that are interacting with each other. If you want to call that big three-dimensional collection of fields an ether, you can, but it would still have spaces in between. You wouldn't have it be completely filled in thick. It wouldn't be like an ether in the way you think of it.
Oh yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Absolutely, yeah. But that's the funny thing about it is that they invoke a background medium mathematically, but they bend over backwards to say anything but a background medium. I talked to a guy that was apparently had some type of education in the quantum realm, and I don't remember what the equations were that he spit out to me, but it was just a mathematical equation that invoked a background medium. And I just think it's funny how like even in your explanation just there, yes, there's a background medium, but we're not going to call it that. Also, an interesting side note, how you said there's multiple different fields. Yes, there's multiple different field perturbation modalities. And so it's one field and, each different frequency, if you will, or, perturbation level creates different effects, I don't know if you ever heard the idea that matter is just high energy light. Well, yeah, that's the same idea. One field, multiple modalities.
Yeah. But if you say, well, yeah, it's kind of produced by it in a sense. But if you say that it's invoking, because when you say you're invoking a model based on what you can sort of predict mathematically, and like entanglement, and you say an ether would make perfect sense for entanglement, that's you invoking a thing based on what would mathematically work as a pattern in your head as well. Like that would make sense if that was the thing. That's invoking that type of thing. But I mean, why not do that for a field? And then the interactions of other things make way more sense as well. Like when you look at the big picture. Like you would have to concede that your model is just as fictive. What is the word in English? Like fictive or something? Fictive? I don't know. As my model is. If it's just based on reasoning off of what you see. Fictitious, that's it.
So, okay, to that point, this is a great kind of segue here, a point in direction. So, are you aware of the Faraday paradox?
I've heard of it so many times, but I forget what it is every time, so no, I don't remember.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I can go through it real quick. It's the same thing as like the alternator in your car. You have a copper coil that's wound in vortex geometry. Then you have a magnet. So here's how the paradox goes, just in a nutshell. So if you spin the copper against the magnet, you'll create a charge. If you spin the copper and the magnet, you will also get a charge. But if you spin just the magnet, you will not get a charge, and it doesn't work. And what that's illustrating to us is that it's not the magnet itself that is creating this charge in its relation, its spatial relation to where the copper is. It's the 3D space around the magnet that is creating the charge. And so that's why it's called the Faraday paradox, is because it's, you'd think it's the position of the magnet, but it's not the position of the magnet. It's the position of the magnet within 3D space. And so that's proving that the magnet is affecting something within 3D space. That is actually what is the copper is interfacing with, not the actual magnet.
Yeah, but that also makes perfect sense in the normal physics model as well, though, right? You wouldn't expect that to be created from a spinning magnet in the first place. But I see what you're saying. You kind of like if you imagine it like water, you see the wire and the coil spinning, like twirling up this thing that it would be the ether energized background or something, like water in a swirl.
Yeah, I guess I just encourage you to think about that. And obviously, it's something that, maybe hearing it for the first time and stuff. But yeah, the copper isn't moving against the magnet and creating a charge. That's not happening. The copper isn't touching the magnet. The copper is within the magnetic field that the magnet is creating, or polarizing, if you will. It's not emanating from the magnet. The magnet is affecting something that's already in 3D space.
Yes, it's not coming from the magnet, even in the other normal physical model either, though. Like, you would have to spin the coil around to get that effect regardless. You would never expect, just because, like, it's not the relativistic rotation looking from above these things that matter and creates the magnetic field. It is the fact that the coil is spinning around it. So of course it's going to happen when it's only spinning and when both the magnet and that is spinning, but not when the magnet is spinning. You're not expecting to create anything out of that. It is because you're creating friction around the magnet. You're creating heavy friction.
Yeah, but if that friction was attached to the magnet, like would be necessitated within the model, then it would definitely work if you spun the magnet. And that's why it's called a paradox, is because
it would work.
It should, but it doesn't, because the field is not attached to the magnet. The magnet is affecting a field within 3D space.
Right, but it would okay, I keep finding stuttering. I smoke too much, but it would affect it to a minuscule degree. Or is it actually affecting nothing? It should be a tiny amount. It should be nowhere close to the thing spinning around it, though.
I think it's zero, but you make me want to go back and look to see if it's actually a full. I'm pretty sure it's a zero, but no, it's a great question.
Yeah, I'd want to know also. That'd be interesting. I might look it up.
This might sound a little weird, like I do anyway. I have a hula hoop that I got wound coil around and a spherical magnet that fits inside of it, and I get a pretty damn good differential. And I don't know if that's a paradox or not. If it is, you can name it the hula hoop paradox if you want to.
Yeah, okay, so I had to clarify. It is because the object is moving through the magnetic field lines. And when you're only spinning the magnet, that is not moving through that dense amount of magnetic field lines as the disk would have to spin into, which is what's going to create the field disturbance and create it in the other perpendicular direction.
Yeah, so you'd think, if the lines were attached to the magnet, that you could get them to rotate and create that friction, but they're not. They're attached to 3D space.
No, but it works differently though, frictionally. If you really think about it, it does work differently than that.
Well, yeah, sure. We use things like field lines, I think is like, I don't know, placeholders or a way to quantify something we can't wrap our hands around, I mean,
we can
magnetic
estimate
field lines.
We can draw them out. I mean, have you seen experiments where they just use the magnetic fields to see the shape of it? And you can also just have a magnetic field and put a little magnet somewhere, measure it, like go back, do multiple different dots of that, and then draw out what you predict or made measurements of. You'll have the same thing. So there is like a determined sort of shape to this thing where it's stronger and less. And you kind of have to move through that. Just changing the direction of it isn't going to be the same thing as dragging in it with a lot of matter. The magnet doesn't have a lot of matter, just like the disk has a lot more.
Sure, yeah. I'm thinking of like, I don't know, this iron dust or whatever, when you put it down and it creates the magnetic field lines. Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying with that.
Yeah, those two.
But for me personally, like, everything makes a hell of a lot more sense and is far less paradoxical if we're all inside of, an ever-present field. I don't need to invoke with ether.
I just think the best effort really is made to explain it the best way we can think about it, and maybe if they haven't discovered yet, I think that if they discovered that the ether would be the best way, they would probably postulate more on that as well. And maybe it is true. Maybe there is an ether. I don't know. Nobody really
Well, I
knows.
think, here, Tesla, Steinmetz, Heaviside, everybody who did anything of any significance, they were all ether physicists, I mean, do you think that's really a coincidence?
Well, it was popular back then, and then why would it be popular in science, like pretty mainstream science, and then just kind of be censored or taken away if you just had moved on to a better idea? I think. What is the issues you might have with like the Michelson-Morris experiment or something like that?
Oh, so there's another question I want to ask you that you reminded me of when you just said that right there. I mean, do you believe that governments around the world have your best interest in mind?
No, but I know they don't have each other's best interest in mind and wouldn't collaborate on such a truth
Okay.
thing.
You think knowledge is power?
That's the ultimate power.
Indeed, it is, sir. So ultimate knowledge of ultimate reality would give you the ultimate power.
For sure.
I would definitely encourage you to
they're.
think strongly. Go ahead.
I see what you're saying, but I think that's why every nation is bragging about or trying to race in science as fast as possible to beat other countries. And I think the science matches up pretty well between all countries that do science. I think they're just trying to do that because they know that knowledge is power. There's a race towards AI now. Who can get the AGI first? It's like, and I think that applies to all fields. Like, if
What
they
is a
believe
field?
space is real, what is a field? I mean, we can explain it in terms of, if you understand quantum field theory, for example. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to properly explain a field, or even if I can build the concept correctly in my mind at one time without thinking about like three different parts separately. I can't get like a clear image of what a field would be in one image.
Yeah, Ken Wheeler was the first person to properly define it, in my opinion. He said that a field is an ether perturbation modality. And I think that makes perfect sense. Because
Well, we never know. Maybe we'll find out. But there must have been a reason why
what
science
about
got
things
away
like,
from it, though.
well, yeah, there is. It's to keep power away from regular people and in the hands of a few. Sound familiar?
But why
you
wasn't
know,
like part of the mainstream then?
it kind of was and it wasn't. Like Nikola Tesla would talk about it all the time, and he used to preface his speeches by saying that space has no properties, and he was very specifically an anti-relativist. And Einstein was obviously, pushed to the forefront and frickin' popularized through propaganda or whatever else, to create the relativistic paradigm. And I think that right there was like the crux point, where Nikola Tesla knew about the ether and was working with it and trying to figure out ways to create, free energy, for lack of a better term, or more efficient ways to create energy. And he wanted to give it away to the world for free. I mean, you probably heard the story about Wardenclyffe Tower, where he was supposed to be building a radio tower, but was actually building a free energy transmission device, and they destroyed it.
Yeah, because I mean that was a huge failure. I mean, even structurally. I mean, he thought that you could send electricity through the air. You can do that. We know how to do that. It's extremely dangerous, very inefficient, and his idea was stupid. That was a very dumb thing, and I understand why they wanted to take it down. Honestly, not to sound rude to his idea, but I think that's a really dumb idea. He could fuck a lot of shit up to do that.
I mean, shit, we have wireless chargers now.
Yeah, but they induce via like they don't try to directly send electricity through the air. That's not what they do.
Yeah, I was watching a thing the other day about an electret, and you can I don't even know how you call it. It's some kind of plastic or something that holds a charge, and you can light up an LED from a distance with it. Something I have to look
Is it
into
the one
more.
where like they suspend light or whatever? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, it's like a weird little plastic hockey puck that they like. I think it's like a super heavy magnetic field, and they polarize it and then charge it. Like I said, I'm gonna have to look back into it, but it's just like a piece of plastic, and then the piece of plastic is holding like a static charge, and then you get it close to an LED, and it'll light the LED up, from like a couple feet away.
Oh, I guess
But
just
I don't know more about it
get
yet.
a lot of static electricity then, yeah. So strong that a light can pick it up. That's a lot.
Yeah, and it's called an electret. So
I'll
I'm
look
new
into
to it.
that.
Like I said, I don't know a lot about it yet. Yeah.
nice.
No, I just, the people who, like I said, the people who invented everything, Tesla, Steinmetz, Heaviside, all of them, ether physicist. I think there's something, I would encourage you to be curious about that, I guess.
I appreciate the point, and I can see why you think that. But there's also a hell of a lot more physicists that aren't ether physicists that have contributed a lot to the body of work as well. But if there's any specific topic, oh, Steve is here.
What about morphic resonance? Have you ever heard that term before?
Give it to me. What is that?
Oh, it's the term that Rupert Sheldrake came up with, for like when you teach the monkeys on one island a particular technique or something, and then all the monkeys on all the islands start doing it. You ever heard that story?
No, I've not.
Oh yeah, it's true scientific stuff. Like where, one isolated species of animal on an island learns something new, and then all the animals of that species start doing the same thing. And Rupert Sheldrake called it morphic resonance, and he theorizes that there's a specific field that connects all living beings, from which we draw, I don't know, knowledge. And it's a very general explanation.
In what time frame did they start doing the same thing on the other place? Like how long in between?
I don't remember. I want to say it was a relatively short period of time, like weeks. It's pretty well documented. It's a thing,
Yeah, but it's also not entirely clear that. Yeah, I mean that is a little bit weird that that's happening, but it also wouldn't make complete nonsense for evolution to do that. I mean, if we exist together for a long time in a community, like all of us in this VC, and then we split into two groups the next week, I think a lot of us still share the same amount of communication to maybe start doing the same activity if we split off into two groups, just because of the previous communication we've had.
It has also been tried with humans. As I tell it as I remember it, it started in England, and they started a group of people. Certain questions, there were trap questions and difficult questions and easy questions, and they ended that session in England, and that gave a certain result. And then they moved to Australia, and they did it there, and the result was a little bit better. Then they came back to England, and the result was very much better. So that's what I remember of that that kind of experiment.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be so uncommon then.
No, I don't think. But I have a lot of thoughts about it. I think the World Wide Web is preparing us for a true worldwide connection.
I think that is true.
And that the ether will become more powerful because of the fourth source called the mother of all mothers coming back into life. It's the bite out of the apple that comes back, the apple being the symbol for the torus fields, the electromagnetic.
Did you say earlier that had something to do with hydrogen and oxygen?
Well, what I said about water, that it is depicted as H2O, and that H is the symbol for male, and O is the symbol for feminine. So with the mother not present, one of the O's is gone. So it's H2O. But with the mother returning, right, guiding the action man inside of us, the electric. So don't stare yourself dead on male and feminine as in the physical, but more in the metaphysical. It will become H2O2, and water is the exchanger of information. Water holds information, but it also is very fast influenced by new information.
What do you mean it will become H2O2? What do you mean by that?
Because that, as I see it, water is the connector between the electromagnetic and the electric. That's how it's built. So
But
it's
the oxygen isn't the opposite of hydrogen. So
yeah,
you can't just
yeah.
stack them
I
like
know.
bubbles, bro.
I totally let go of the hydrogen and oxygen as something physical.
But then I mean, it won't become H2O2 and then H2O2, H2O2, and 3 times and 4 times.
It just is a metaphysical nomination of what is going on.
Right. So you're not saying it's literally you're not gonna get an H2O2.
It's literal in the metaphysical way.
Okay, can you just tell me, in my world that I exist in, okay, is there gonna be an H2O2 molecule being formed in the ether?
What is a molecule?
I can't do this, my guy. Dude, I'm smoking. I am too high for this.
Start getting smoking.
I know, dude. I have like another gram here to smoke. I think I need it.
I would advise it. I would advise it.
I'm working on it.
Fuck it, I'll join you.
Hell yeah. This is like a nightmare blood rotation. Oh, it's lovely.
Have you ever seen? Well, you're aware of like things like perihelion shift and retrograde motion.
I know about retrograde motion.
Yeah, I think perihelion shift is like the same thing, just like another name for it.
I mean, we were very spooked out by it when we didn't understand it, but now when we know how it works, it's not really that. It's not really that
Well,
complicated.
it breaks relativity, doesn't it? I mean, that's essentially what it does.
No, no, it doesn't.
Sure, it does. How would it not? It, you know,
It's
that's
just
why
our
relativity
orbit
is.
around. Go on.
It's our orbit. Oh, okay.
No, it's because our orbit around the sun, relative to the orbit of Mercury in this example, is going to line up in such a way to where it looks like it stops and then goes the other way in the sky. But that's not like we perfectly see this in the heliocentric model why that would be enough. So we're not as confused and scared by it anymore. Retrograde motion is fine. You understand?
I don't know if that's the case though. I'm pretty sure
Just
it breaks relativity
no, it
because
doesn't, I
relativity
promise.
makes the right prediction up until that point. I mean, is that not the case? So like relativity is making these correct predictions, and then all of a sudden you get to perihelion shift or retrograde motion, and you're like, hey, wait a second. But you're saying it's something to do with our angle to it or something?
Yeah, it's not.
I need
It's
to look
not
into this more.
actual retrograde. It's not actual retrograde motion. It's what we call it because it looks like it.
I need to look into that one more because I think those two
Yeah, it's
things
very interesting.
break relativity. Because relativity is not a law for a reason, right? It's still called a theory because it's not dynamics; it's kinematics. It's really just a reverse engineered observation. That's all it is an observation of periodicity. Its predictive power goes out the window with the things like retrograde motion.
No, because yeah, I mean, it's not actual retrograde motion. It's the apparent backward movement of planets across the sky, and it's very easy to explain with the orbital mechanics.
I was going to say we've been learning a lot from James Webb telescopes of data releases. I mean, if it's accurate, then it's different than what was expected. So evidently, we just got a lot to learn.
Yeah, I think it saw that 2/3 of galaxies rotated in a particular direction as opposed to the 1/3, which is not to be expected if they're expected to be random. Why would 2/3 be the same direction and only 1/3 be? So that's kind of a weird result.
Yeah, like that. There's a lot of weird stuff. The cosmic microwave background. You know.
You mean how homogeneous it is?
Yeah. Yep. We're all generally aware of that. There's
Yeah.
a lot of anomalous things, when you take into account the entirety of what relativity would mean, if we were in some type of random, collision beehive, So you do see order in the larger pattern then.
Yeah, to a lot of extent in certain areas. I mean, the biggest part I see is CP violation, which is the charge parity violation. Because when you have a matter particle and an anti-particle, they pair, right? They should completely cancel out. Like the waves should be completely opposite, so that they go to zero and they completely annihilate and turn into radiation. And so you should have no matter even in the Big Bang. But the laws of physics kind of don't work for like what is it, 0.004% of the time or something, and that's called a charge parity violation. And so that's why some annihilations failed, so it squirted out some matter of I think it's 1 to 100,000 possible outcomes. So if it just happened a little bit more, the universe would have way too much matter. It would fall back into a like huge black hole or something. If it was a little bit less, no life would be possible. Everything would be very not dense, and you wouldn't have suns and stuff. So that is a kind of a weird amount of CP violations for it to be just right for galaxies and stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I meant the last time about mathematically. To me, something doesn't add up. Just for things to be just right, for us to be living right now, for us to be able to observe, what's it called when you get the total eclipse? It's a sweet spot, and it's only supposed to last about 550 million more years. But I mean, that's I have no words for it now.
It's compelling, isn't it? That the moon does offer coverage.
I mean, the size to distance ratio being 400 to 1, and they match, I mean, almost exactly, is pretty astonishing. The moon is moving away at like 2.2 centimeters a year, though.
Yeah,
Sure.
like I
It
said,
won't
it's
match up forever.
predicted 550 million more years, and that's all. So the fact that we are living in this time now, where we are to perceive what we perceive, is pretty amazing.
Well, I think I mean, what are the odds that we happen to be the conscious ones at the time that is the latest time of the universe, as opposed to all the 13.8 billion years? I think we are probably always the edge of existence, and we don't realize that we always just probably are the universe perceiving itself. And we build memories, it disassembles, a new brain is formed, it builds memories for like 50 years. So that piece of the universe thinks it's only 50 years, and it keeps going.
Well, I mean,
We
we might
probably
not be.
experience the whole story.
We might not be the only life. It's like being in one valley and asserting that 10 valleys away there's nothing there. You can't do that, can you? Really, with any degree of confidence.
Well, within this heliocentric model of explosions and collisions and random chance happenstance, like,
Yeah.
what do you like? So the odds are obviously astronomical right off the bat.
They
But
are.
do you really think it's random, or what do you think are the organizational forces? Like, at which point did this random collision explosion turn into, well, now I'm going to organize matter in a coherent way? Like, do you
I don't
attribute
think
that to
nobody
divinity?
knows
Or
I don't
Yeah, nobody
attribute
knows
that.
that.
No, I don't attribute any cogent, like, internal thought process or anything like that. I just assume it's all one big glorified mechanic. But that in itself doesn't preclude a god. There are plenty of people that are happy with the idea of God propagating the world the way we see it. In the wink of an eye, of a lift of his brow and a muse of his a single thought, he created a universe that unfolded with the beauty and exquisite complexity that it is. That's for us. That's still a meaningful way of perceiving. Because if the universe is as massive and as complex and as seemingly to us chaotic as it is, that doesn't mean say it's chaotic to an all-thinking and all-knowing entity that created it, does it? He could have in a split second put in motion all the processes that gets to where we are here in one glorified intricate clock that unfolds itself. You don't have to stymie God by saying, "Oh, it's 7 days, 6,000 years ago." I think that's being rather disingenuous to an entity which could do anything it wanted to.
oh yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that explanation. I just, like, you guys are aware of entropy. I mean, isn't that the dominant force of what's going on? That things are always constantly decaying.
Sure. Well, I mean, entropy just describes the motion of energies, isn't it, on a larger both temporal and dimensional scale. And the premise, I got no way of verifying it, but the premise is that heat death is an inevitable outcome of everything, where everything basically settles back down again to an equilibrium. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's conceptual. No one can know that's going to happen for certain. They can look at the way what they look at when they look up and they look around and what they see and what they sense is happening, and they hypothesize that. It's not testable, is it? As such, it's hypothetical. It'll be hypothetical to the very end. But I don't think it's necessarily. You can't. I don't think anybody similarly is able to assert with any degree of confidence that it's definitely wrong as a concept. It does by its nature take some aspects of what we see into consideration when it formulates that. Now, are the consequences of thinking in those terms that you have to wait, billions and trillions and quadrillions of years for things to happen? Does that make any sense? No, because for most people, numbers with more than 10 zeros just aren't in any way meaningful whatsoever. We were given 10 fingers And in all honesty, for most people, they conceptually the big numbers and the idea of noting of big numbers and big amount of time break down quite quickly for them, because we're pretty much engineered to work on a day-to-day basis in the small world we live in. It doesn't mean to say we can't think in those terms, but can we ever corroborate those things? No, I don't think we ever can.
Yeah, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that if entropy were the dominant force in the universe, if decay and dissolve were the main thing that was happening, life would have never taken root in the first place. So it's my idea that entropy isn't the dominant force in the universe. It's actually ectropy, an increase in organization or organizational force. It's like this idea that there was this primary like substrate that was just consisted of matter, and it's banging around in the universe, and then it spontaneously decides to become ectropic instead, to become organizational instead of disorganizational. I think that would be completely impossible without some type of, assistance. Does that make sense? Like over all that time, billions and trillions of years or whatever, like entropy was increasing, not decreasing, within like a relativistic model. What I'm trying to say is that there's no natural, outside of God, there's no natural way to say, well, organization just spontaneously decided to increase. I think one or the other has to be dominant.
I sympathise with what you're saying. I've also heard people describe, the entropic idea of that, there was a moment of complete lack of entropy and with this singularity or whatever, and everything then drift away from that. And they drew an analogy that we're kind of our entire it's a pretty way out way of looking at it, but they said that our universe as we see and experience and observe it, we are part of the wick about to become the flame of the candle, and we're on a thin interface of highly entropic existence, and ultimately the candle will burn out and the air will reach the same temperature in the cathedral around the candle, and then that's the low entropy in the long term. It's very difficult to conceptualize the size of the universe, and large areas of the universe are at low entropy by definition of the way they describe it. So it's like bubbles in a drink. The bubbles are highly excited, whereas most of the fluid around it is by visual comparison, it's not doing anything. So I get. I'm not going to dismiss both any either in it as a concept, because ultimately you're talking about conceptualizing something on a scale we can't corroborate too well, I don't think.
I think we can definitely theorize about it, and think logically. It's like what you're saying. I like the analogy. It's a good analogy with like a candle and the candle burning. I would only say that what organized the wick in the first place? Like if there's going to be something to burn, like there's this point where there was disorganization and disorder, but then somehow there was order, and not only order, but an increase in order, and the order continued to increase. I don't think you can't have both. Do you see what I'm saying?
If anything can stick to something else, it can tumble and create structure. You can create many specific type of laws where it can just tumble into something and create structure that orders on scale.
Well, like the kind of order we're talking about here, I mean, the analogy has been used before, and I think it's a great one. The type of order we're talking about here is like a tornado going through a junkyard and leaving behind a working 747 with a full tank of gas. I mean,
it's not really. I mean, okay, if you imagine,
not really, you're right. Real reality is more spectacular than that.
It is.
That is less spectacular.
If you imagine evolution, though, as like, if you can imagine dust particles that can cling together, and then you blow on those with a fan, those that manage to tumble in such a way to form structure that survive the wind and don't fall apart are the ones that remain. And that's pretty much the way I view life. It's just energy was able to clump together to form matter, and the matter that was able to tumble in such a way to remain a stable structure and pass that on is what gets to be the part of the universe that can observe itself.
I mean, there's a way in which you can suggest that, if you think, given the scale of the thing, the way that's proposed, the general notion of how it is, the layer in which wherever existence takes place, wherever the shape of the world, that layer we live in is so thin compared to everything else. It's virtually zero size. So we are literally in an energetic maelstrom, in a much calmer sea of a void. So in that sense, it's very difficult to look at what's happening here and propagate it out and notice what's going on elsewhere. The analogy, you can say that you can see how non-organized mechanisms can create symmetries. You can see stalactites and stalagmites forming just from flowing water and minerals. Now, none of those minerals or the water is in any particularly sentient orchestration to create those structures, but they're instantly visible to us if we look for patterns. there's an argument to say that evolution and all those things in chemistry and biochemistry, they're all just pattern structures. They just work on a more complicated and much broader scale. That means it's almost unfathomable to work out the interactions that made them take place. It doesn't rule it out.
Sure, just highly unlikely.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that you're right. The chances of a planet being the place we live in like this existing, arguably, if you think about it long enough, are incredibly unlikely. If you live in a realm where the number of permutations of this sort of thing going on everywhere are vast enough, and there's almost inevitably that it would happen somewhere. That's one way of looking at it, I suppose. Like you say, if the world was a 90 trillion sided dice, and it just so happened to land on the number that you thought was the one that had some meaning, that would be inconceivable. You say, well, someone must have placed it on that, so that was face up. But if you understand that maybe in the universe you can't see there's a trillion of these dice, and there's no one to look at, there's no one to see all the other faces landing up, and then you kind of sort of think, well, okay, well, that maybe the fact that we are here and and it is fantastically unlikely doesn't mean to say that that's just a consequence of us being here to see it, rather than it being anything particularly miraculous. I mean, that doesn't rule out the idea of some creation mechanism which is beyond our capabilities to understand, which you can grant godlike status, you can call it whatever you like, but that doesn't mean to say that the processes that got you here aren't part of the plan, and everyone's got an explanation as to how they worked and how they unfolded. I don't think any particular way of observing it that doesn't take into consideration some of the things they do take consideration is the only way to go about things. I don't think that everything that people do that thousands of people do in their everyday life when they evaluate things is all a naive, foolish folly or a wholly deceptive way of trying to conceal something. Because I don't see why anybody would want to conceal everything from us. They don't gain. There's no one that gains from a level of concealment that don't have everything they want already. I think it's just a very, very big, very, very complicated realm we live in, and we're just all navigating through it, trying to work out what it is and who and how it got here. But I think a lot of these questions will never be definitively answered.
Did you know that within DNA, I was just going to say there are error correcting codes within DNA whose job is to go around and make sure that the rest of the code is correct.
Yeah.
Something.
I mean, in the replication process, yes, there is. There are enzymes that make sure that the replication process is accurate, and the reason for that is because our cells multiply, our cells divide, and they divide quite a lot. And when they divide, they copy all the cellular structures that are inside of the cells. And one of the most crucial parts of the cellular structure is the DNA. So the process when a cell replicates itself, it splits itself into two parts, is the replication process. So there is an enzyme called DNA polymerase that does that, and it's quite fascinating because it has what's called in biochemistry a very high fidelity, which means that it has an extremely small margin of error. And it does have a lot of coenzymes that helps it accurately replicate the DNA from one cell to the other cell. But you do understand why this mechanism exists, because such a mechanism needs to exist, because if there was a chance if there was a decent chance of a replication error each time your cells would divide, it would be impossible for an organism to even exist. So it's an evolutionary adaptation that all eukaryotes have for this process to exist.
Well, that's a paradox then, because which came first, the code that knew everything or the code that just was the code that needed to be corrected?
Well, that depends on what you define as the code that knew everything. How do you define a code that knows everything? Like, when you say know everything, do you mean that there is a code for life? Or, like, I'm not sure what you're getting at. Could you expand on that, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. I was shooting from the hip there. So the error correcting code basically is a copy of the correct code, but
Yes.
Which came first? So the original code that came without the error correcting codes, at which point did it decide to synthesize an error correcting code? Do you see what I'm saying?
So, I mean, no, not really. So you're saying that the existence of an error correction code, the mechanism of an error correcting code, begs the question where it originally came from?
Yeah. So which came, the code invented itself with the error correction in the first place?
No, these enzymes were a gradual evolution from the eukaryote. So the eukaryote cell is the type of cells that humans consist of. And these mechanism has evolved with millions and millions of time. And originally they came from bacteria that doesn't have that code
I think
correction.
he's talking about where DNA came from in the first place, or how it.
No. Hold on. No, he was right on the right track. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no.
the millions
I
of
understand.
evolution, the millions of
Yeah.
evolution that would have taken place would have required the error correcting code because it's there for a reason. It's there because DNA can become damaged.
Yeah,
So
correct.
if the original code didn't have the damage correction, it would have been damaged and destroyed. It would have become entropic.
Yeah. No, you are right. You're right. The necessity of the mechanisms that corrects the DNA code during replication process is a necessity of life. It is. Because as you well put, actually, if the DNA gets damaged, then this would be it would be what's called an unregulated cell division, which we all know is cancer, basically. But the sheer existence of it doesn't disprove the theory of evolution within itself, because this self-replicating, self-correcting mechanism existed for millions of years, already from when eukaryotes started existence. What you have to understand is that the eukaryote cell didn't just pop into existence. It gradually became the cellular structure that we have today. So for a very long time, if we go back 300 billion years, the very first eukaryote had only a few cellular structure. And with time, it evolved to contain all those cellular structures that we consist of today. So to make a long story short, because I don't want to ramble too long, it's basically a gradual evolutionary concept that made this mechanism become better and better and better with time.
I guess the original argument that I made is that it would have eventually, the species would have died, whatever we're talking about here, because it didn't have the error correcting code, because the error correcting code is needed in the first place. I'm not asking you to come to God or anything. I'm just saying it's a conundrum.
Yes, I do agree. It is a conundrum, but I mean, cellular change can be positive and negative, because without cellular change and to some degree mutations, the evolution couldn't have driven forward. And don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you that the system is by any means perfect or has been perfect. I mean, we do know that cancers do exist and that cellular damage and DNA damage does exist. I'm not by all means painting this as an ultimate perfect process that is so perfect that it could not have been made spontaneously by nature. What I am saying, though, is that this mechanism was a gradual increase, and a lot of species did die out during the early evolution of the eukaryote cell because the system took its time to become as high fidelity as it is today. I do have some pages from a cell and molecular biochemistry book that I can post. No, I can't post them in the server. No, I can't. Oh, that's too bad. Where there's some more information about the fidelity, about DNA replication. But basically, you can look any book about DNA replication. But again, don't want to blabber too much. A lot of species did die out during the very early inception of how eukaryotes finally evolved into what they are today. So you are right. A lot of species did die out in this process. That's how evolution works.
Were you guys talking about evolution? Like the start of evolution?
No, he was asking about. Well, when I came in, you guys were discussing about if I understand this correctly, the possibilities of life emerging, and I believe the possibility of how plants are made and the mechanism of chance involved into it.
Right, so like you go to the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes.
I mean, we're talking about how DNA has to be perfect each time the cells are replicated. So yes.
There's 2 awesome presentations on A-Biognss on the server. Hopefully another one soon.
I did hold a presentation on A-Biognss, but I'm not sure if I did it in the server you are talking about. A-Biognss is a very, very tricky subject because it requires so many different fields of science in order to understand it. There is this book, see if I can find it, on A-Biognss that is absolutely insane thick, but I could recommend it highly. It does require some understanding of the modern atomic theory. Let me see. If
It requires imagination, Guy, because it's stupid and nonsensical, obviously.
Yeah, I will just post the name and title of the book, and you guys can choose for yourself if you guys want to read it or not. It's up to you. See if I can find it.
I think it's statistically impossible, and that's based on talking to PhD biologists about it. I think abiogenesis is the only way to claim for non-intelligent design, and then also it's statistically impossible.
Oh, I can post the link here. I don't think I would be breaking terms of service to just recommending a book for you. I posted it in the live stream text chat, and if some mod has something against that, let me know and I'll delete it. There we go. The name of the book is Abiogenesis, The Physical Basis for Living Systems. It's a pretty fat textbook, but it's one of the best ones, in my opinion.
Have you read it?
I read some parts of it, yeah. I read some parts of it, and I've read some parts of another book that I could actually highly recommend, which is The Cell, A Molecular Approach by Cooper. I can also post a link to that book for the people who want to read it. That one is my favorite, actually.
So do you think that's a statistically viable theory for how the basis of life started?
So when we try to come up...
Here we go.
Let me post the book first before I start talking, because I'm not very good at doing multiple things at once. There we go. I'm sorry, I lost track. I can't do two things at once. What did you say?
Yeah, do you think it's a statistically viable theory for the origin of life, abiogenesis, self-assembly?
I think that what is statistically viable isn't a very productive way of trying to figure out different types of scientific theory. You can't use statistics in the terms, because the natural processes of physics, chemistry, and biology aren't random. In order to understand statistics, that leaves up for an even chance of everything of happening, and that's statistics in its core. But that's not how the forces of physics and biology and chemistry work. There are rules of how biology works. There are rules of how physics work, and there are rules.
Okay, so the book that you recommended, the textbook, opens with energy-directed probabilistic self-assembly and talks about the statistical probability of this happening. I don't actually. I'm gonna.
The Abiogenesis
Yeah, the Abiogenesis book, the physical basis. That book opens with that. That's chapter 1. So I'm gonna disengage because I already asked you a question that was a clean yes or no that you didn't answer, and then the book you recommended to everybody opens with the opposite of what you just said. So I'm gonna disengage. I think you're full of shit, but it's all good.
Have you heard of the gambler's fallacy?
No,
is that when someone doesn't expect you to look into what they talk about?
No, it's the idea that if there's a certain probability for being able to get a winning strike or whatever, that there's a maturity that within each play that you're getting closer to. I didn't win last time, but I won this time, kind of thing. When in reality, every time that you swing, I'm sorry.
Is it similar to sunk cost fallacy?
No, it's much worse. Because the gambler's fallacy is that the more you play, the more likely you're going to win. And when in reality, your probability is, especially when it includes like a multitude of factors and trillions of things that need to be present at the same time, that you have to win the lottery trillions of times in a row. So it's a fallacy to think that the more you roll the dice, that eventually you're just going to get all of the dice striking the numbers that you need all at once.
I thought it was just I thought the gambler's fallacy was if you're at the roulette table and it's been red 20 times, it's all blacks do. So you put all your money on black.
Yeah, because eventually you have to. I mean, statistically, it would have to be black eventually. So that's the fallacy: is that the more you play, the more likely you're gonna get it. When in reality, your numbers reset every time you play. And in the case of Abiogenesis, there are literally hundreds of thousands of things that must have had happened in, what's the word? In order or succession. With very specific circumstances that are all each random dice plays. So even in a random, even in a somewhat designed world, it's somewhat impossible, right? You find a Lamborghini that just appeared in nature, but then also there happened to have been an identical female Lamborghini that it was able to reproduce with. It's just you would had to have had cases for every single living thing on Earth with this kind of behavior So like we would be soaked in examples of these things that we just can't even find when we're looking for them full time.
Right, you need like hundreds of factories working at the same time purposefully to build like maybe millions of factories to build specific parts. But to say that it's not about probability, which was Mr. Ad Infinitum's whole point, Chapter 1 talks about the probabilistic underpinnings of the theory. So to say that it's not about probability and statistics when Chapter 1 opens with entirely that, it's just either you didn't read the book and you're dishonestly recommending it, or you read it and you just you didn't expect people to read Chapter 1?
I don't think that's what he meant. He meant that that's not a viable way of determining whether it's true or not, right? So the longest craps game in the history went for 4 hours, and it was the chances of that happening was 1.56 trillion. 1 in 1.56 trillion. So
yeah, but those are rookie numbers
you
compared
do
to what
realize
you're
that
looking
the
for.
book says energy directed probabilistic self-assembly. You do realize that it says energy directed, and that's a very important word.
In
right?
the screenshot, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So
no
energy-
abiogenesis without that.
Yeah. So energy directed, that's a very important word.
This
in
is
the
a
context.
desperate branch you're trying to grab onto to get out of what you had
No,
said.
not really. No, because the
Oh, it says
setup-
energy directed, therefore I didn't say the opposite of what the book I recommended said.
No, it's a very important word in the context of understanding.
How does
life
energy
and
directed change what I had said? How does that change anything?
Because energy directed, because the way atoms are being connected together doesn't have a random set of patterns to it. The way atoms are connected together is based on atoms and molecules wanted to have the lowest amount of energy to have a stable conformity to it.
This is
how
complete
atoms and
non
molecules
sequitur.
work.
This is a complete gish gallop.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah,
because,
as good as we understand atoms today, I mean, that really honestly supports an intelligent designer. Because like you guys don't understand what even creates the standard of which how these things operate in the first place.
So just to drive the point home here, if you have hydrogen and oxygen together, are you gonna start making like these random molecules which all kinds of setups between hydrogen and oxygen? That's not going to happen. So when you connect hydrogen and oxygen together, warm water is going to form. And the reason for that, because it is an energy directed conformity of how those molecules are formed, because all molecules strive to have the lowest energy stability. That's why energy directed is a very important word in the context of abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is not a spontaneous reaction, the same way that chemical reactions aren't spontaneous reactions. So
yeah, I'm not sure if you weren't able to hear my point about what you had initially said, or if you're purposefully talking past it. But again, I'm going to disengage. We can talk about the gambler's fallacy, which is new to me. It is not like the loaded question fallacy. But I don't know if you just are going to ignore my point. You're just going to talk past it. It's fine. That's okay.
No, I'm not ignoring your point. I'm addressing your point.
Okay, can I just ask you, could you repeat back my point? It's a very simple one. Can you steelman it?
Yeah, the universe and life arose through a process of energy-directed probabilistic self-assembly
That's
or
not my point.
abiogenesis.
Nope.
That's the very first word that says in the chapter in the book that I read.
That's not. I asked you to steelman my point. Can you steelman my point? Yes or no?
Steelman your point about probabilistic self-assembly?
The point that you're refuting and replying to, surely you know what it is, so you could steelman it, right?
No, I'm not sure what your point is.
Okay, so that's why I'm going to disengage, because you're either talking past what I had said to you, or you just ignored it, or you know what it is, but you're acting like you do. You don't. You don't know what the point I made to you was, and that's okay. I'm going to disengage. I'm not interested. I think you're bad faith. I think you just say things. I don't think it's good faith to say I'm refuting what you had said when you don't even know what the person said.
You said that the book that I recommended to you measures probabilistic self-assembly, and you state that as a way that life could not have rose because of probabilistic reasons. And I'm telling you, because these probabilistic reasons are energy directed, life could not have rose because of probabilistic reasons. And I'm telling you, because these probabilistic reasons are energy directed. That's a very important word in the context, because if you're trying to diffuse...
No, you got it wrong again. What I was talking about was how you initially said that probability had nothing to do with it when the book opens with probabilistic underpinnings of living systems. And you're like, yeah, but it says energy directed probably. Yes. Like that doesn't affect the point.
He's not pointing at your mechanism, right? The mechanism, it is what is quantified in your probability. And his argument is you're using probabilistic means.
Yes, but is it entirely? Yes, it is probabilistic.
Doesn't
but is it
matter. Doesn't
random?
matter. You could put rainbows under the umbrella of probabilistic. Okay. The point is he's defeating you with the fact that it's just numbers.
Also,
No, those numbers
you're
aren't
trying
random.
to talk past it still, but why don't you address that point? You said that probability has nothing to do with it when that's the first chapter. It talks about the probability and statistics. You had this whole point about how probability and statistics has nothing to do with it. And then I opened your book, and the first chapter talks about it. It talks about the chapter 1.2 says the definition of probability, probability distributions, properties of probability. Like, look in the screenshot I posted, man. Like, the amount of probability in your book is absurd. The maximum value of probability distribution, the dispersion of probability distribution without the mean, the binomial probability. The entire first chapter is riddled with probability. And then let's go to chapter 2. Can energy direct probability? Energy, entropy, and Boltzmann distribution. All right, like, when you say it's not about probability, did you just expect no one to open the book you recommended? Or did you just not read the book you recommended?
Because there is a difference between probability that is random and probability that follows certain laws and structures.
All right, thanks for playing, brother.
Are you like talking about the difference between ice cream and like diet ice cream? When he's telling you that, you know, your whole idea is about ice cream, you're like, not really, it's diet.
No, I'm talking about that in the current narrative that seemed to be in the channel was that life could not have arisen due to random probabilities because, again, evolution and abiogenesis isn't random. It's energy directed.
Yeah, your argument is against a straw man. No one claimed random. You're the one who keeps claiming random. Who
you can attack me for that.
You?
You could I could maybe have said random. I don't know. It kind of doesn't
multiple
matter when you're
people
dealing
that
with
said
probabilities. Dude, when you're dealing with probabilities, you have a degree of uncertainty and like unexpectation. So it might as well be random. But I'll eat it if that's your point. It's a bullshit point. I don't care. When you have such a small amount of probability, you're fucking skating on ice, thin ice.
So are you claiming that abiogenesis is not possible because of a small level of probability? Am I understanding you
Well, are you
correctly?
saying it is possible because of a small amount of probability? I mean, I'm not the one on the fucking hot seat. You're saying it's possible. I'm saying how possible, and you're saying, well, you know, one small process out of trillions of processes, you know, is one, you know, like trillionth of possibility before the other trillion. So it's like you've got a stack of impossibilities, and you're like, well, this is my argument. So are you saying it's not? I'm like, okay.
No, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not saying there's trillions of impossibilities involved. Like, I'm not sure where you're getting the idea of trillions of possibilities into all this.
Okay, well, just the creation of one cell. Okay.
Okay.
What is the possibility? Energy directed possibility. What is it?
Well, that's a fallacy because the first cell didn't pop out of nowhere. That's not how it works.
Oh, well, give me something. What's a small something in a probability? Just assign a probability to something, please. I'm not going to pick it for you.
But you're asking how the first cell was made, and you're basically drawing.
Nope. I'll give you anything that you have in your theory. Give me something that you have in your theory. What's the probability for it?
100%. We've already made protocells in a whole bunch of
don't
different
care.
ways.
No, talking to him, not
so
you.
It's 100%.
Yeah, walk your dog, please. Talking to this other guy.
I mean, abiogenesis have been proven experimentally. If that's what you want.
No. I want to know something.
One thing, right? He thinks it's.
I will take. I'm only asking for one thing.
A whole bunch of different steps have been demonstrated experimentally.
That's great. I'm asking for one thing.
Okay.
Give me one step and a probability for it.
The steps that have been demonstrated are 100% probability. We can demonstrate them. Thus, they are 100%
No.
probabilistic.
Now you're not part of this conversation because you're disingenuous. You're moving the goalpost to a completely different point that I didn't make. I'm not talking about the fact that you can actually assemble these things with yourself. I'm talking about them actually happening in nature, self-assembly, which is the argument.
Them in nature. We let them self-assemble in nature under prebiotic conditions.
No, you don't. You do them in labs in pristine conditions.
No, we don't. The fuck are you talking about? Protocells have been made a whole bunch of different ways, like coacervate protocells.
Didn't ask about
lipid-based
protocells.
protocells, RNA protocells in nature by making a prebiotic analog environment
Yeah.
and letting them
Not talking to
self-assemble.
this guy.
This has been done many times. Yeah, I know you don't want to talk to me because I actually know about this stuff.
No,
and can,
no, because you just go, you
dominate all
waffle
your
on,
silly points.
you waffle on about nothing forever, and it's exhausting. You're very difficult to listen to.
Doesn't matter if you don't like listening to me. I'm putting the information
Nobody
out
likes
there.
listening to you.
I've posted over
I like listening to
100
him.
research articles on the Omni server about protocells being made both in lab and in nature, self-assembly in nature. Just denying it is silly. Acting like it hasn't been done and trying to find people who are unaware because it's kind of a niche topic, like that's just keeping you ignorant. It's a way
Acting
of
like
justifying
protocells.
keeping yourself ignorant.
Acting like protocells are cells is another leap, isn't it?
Well, because
Like
we're
the
talking about
protocell is not life, is it?
abiogenesis. Abiogenesis
Yeah, no, but
doesn't make cells. That's not what it does.
Is there a video of them self-assembling?
You guys don't even know the topic you're talking about. You're talking about abiogenesis and then getting mad that we're not talking about making cells. Well, abiogenesis didn't make cells either, bro.
Is there a video?
Protocells ain't cells, man.
Cells come about from protocells, which are made in abiogenesis, but through evolutionary processes that continue. So you want to talk about evolutionary processes that make cells? That work has been done as well, but that's a different topic than abiogenesis.
Protocells aren't cells, right?
Yes, so you have processes that are akin to natural
So what are you bringing up
selection.
protocells for?
Because you're talking about abiogenesis, which makes protocells.
And do you think protocells are automatically in the argument then? He's going to inject them into the discussion.
What do you mean? You're talking about so you don't even know the topic that you're talking about. You're talking about abiogenesis, bro. The end result of that is protocells, right? Evolutionary processes start even before that. They start in the physical chemical continuum, but they continue after protocells to form regular cells, but that is a strictly evolutionary process. That's not abiogenesis.
So what you got proof that it's happening, or you got proof that you just got the end result?
It's already happened. We have done it in nature a multitude of different ways, not just in James Tour pristine conditions in the lab. That's just a lie, because we even in the lab we're doing it in prebiotic conditions. That's the whole point of the experiment. But people like David Deemer have done it in nature, out in the field, in nature, in prebiotic
Protocells,
conditions.
not cells.
Well,
So RNA, not DNA specifically.
I was asking if there's a video of them self-assembling on the side of the tree. Is that what you mean?
Well, we don't make videos, right? We report our data in papers, and David Deemers and others have reported their data. They have some pictures of like them and what the group is doing and stuff, but that's not how scientists work. They don't record themselves and all that kind of silly stuff. But yeah, so
you
in
gotta trust them. Trust what they're saying.
No, I've done this stuff myself. In nature, right, we have gone out there, made prebiotic conditions, right, eliminated all the things that are currently living in some environment, some small environment, and worked out the steps of which these things self-assemble under those prebiotic conditions, working out the physical mechanisms, what's actually happening physically for these things to self-assemble. All of that has been done up to protocells, and then David Deemers took it even further, elucidating some of the steps of the evolutionary process that goes from protocells to cells. So that work has been done as well, getting up to like the first actual cells, working out how RNA is converted to DNA.
He's talking about RNA.
No, you're just interrupting.
He's talking about RNA,
working
not
out
DNA.
how RNA protocells would convert to DNA cells. All of that stuff, the mechanisms have already been worked out.
See, this is what he does, man. He just waffles on and on and on.
He's got to have a creation story, everybody, okay? Don't spoil his
No,
creation
you can come
story.
and see it for yourself, bro.
Protocells, save the day.
Andy, you can come and see
people
this
brought
for
germ
yourself.
theory that's been thoroughly debunked.
You can come and see this for yourself, right? You can come
Really?
and see germs for
And
yourself as
and
well.
what would you say? Would you say it's a guided process or just?
Yes, really.
It's a
I
guided
have a
process.
standing open invitation. Any of you that have the gall to actually come do it are welcome to come. Like,
Yeah, where am I going?
grow a pair and
Where am I
come
going?
do it with me.
My
Instead
only
of just
at?
talking
Dude,
shit, like you actually.
Okay,
Where are
will
you
do
at?
it.
Oh my god.
Where
My
are
only
you at?
contention
Grow a
was,
pair and come do it with me.
Where are you at?
Well, I've said this a million times. Get yourself to JFK Airport in New York City, and I'll come pick you up. Just let me know like a week or two ahead of time before you're coming that you're coming, and I'll come pick you up. Give me your phone number, and we'll do some of these things.
It's a
Got an
date,
open
Jayace.
invitation.
Okay,
Well,
roll.
I'm not going to New York, but if somebody else wants to.
I mean, the
So
the
just
conversation.
talking shit about it, like it hasn't been done when it's been done like a multitude of different ways, many times. It's just silly. It's laughably silly.
I have my doubts. I mean, I remember I watched the James Tour thing a few months back, and yeah, he was saying we're so far away from this thing. They get 4 hours to do this thing, and it's like time's against you. And that's what I remember him saying. Like time is your
We
enemy.
can already do
Time
it.
is not
Like,
your
come
friend.
do it with me,
Situation.
Andy. Why are you listening to James Tour, who has nothing to do with origin of life research?
Well,
come to New York City, and we'll do some of the experiments. We'll make some protocells. We'll go from RNA to DNA, just like modern cells do. We'll do all of this stuff. You could see it right with your own eyes. You don't have to listen to James Tour, who has done no research in this field. I don't know why you'd listen to him.
It from RNA to
He seems
DNA,
pretty like he's got the credentials, right? I mean, as far as
No,
I can
he
tell.
doesn't.
Well, he knows
He's
a lot
an
more about it than me.
organic
How's that?
chemist. He has done no work in the field of origin of life, abiogenesis, biochemistry in general. He has no experience with. He's an organic chemist. He makes carbon-based molecules that are molecular machines that have nothing to do with life. Like, why are you taking his words for it?
Well, he seems to know a lot more about it than me. So, I mean, I don't know. That's the way I look at it is, and this conversation was kind of we were talking about that a little bit, as whether it was a guided process or whether it was random, or whether, because that's the way that's my interest on it philosophically. I'm not going to go and study biochemistry to come in here so I can, stroke my ego and go, look, I've proved you wrong. It took me 15 years. No, I'm not going to do that. Fuck that. I already don't think it's true. So that's one reason I'm not going to look into it. But philosophically, it's nonsensical.
It's a guided process.
It is a guided process.
It's not
then.
nonsensical. If you
Okay,
just
it
learn
is
a
a
little
guided
bit
process
about
then.
biochemistry, it's the end result. It's the natural result. It's not nonsensical. Like, why do you keep saying that? And yes, it's a guided process.
Because things don't make
Autocatalysis.
themselves, Jayace.
Yes, they do.
No, they
There's
don't.
autocatalytic cycles in regular organic chemistry. Just because James Tour isn't aware of them. Autocatalytic meaning molecules that replicate themselves naturally, just by thermodynamics and kinetics alone. Regular
Thermodynamics says everything's falling
do that.
apart. Everything's degenerating. Everything's falling apart, Jayace. What are you talking about?
That's not what thermodynamics says. Life is actually one of the most entropy dispersing kind of things that can actually come about. So thermodynamics actually says, and there's tons of research on this, just because James Tour is unaware of it, that when you have an energy gradient, like something like the sun, that's giving a lot of energy to the earth, or whatever the source of energy is, right? The more complex a system is, the more entropy it can create at a faster rate. So when you do like entropy experiments, when you go from low entropy to high entropy, there arises complex systems in the middle, because those are what disperses. They take the state from low entropy to high entropy. It's a natural result.
Look, listen, this is my contention. There's nothing makes itself. That's stupid. And also, there must be some intelligence behind it, right? I mean, what they talk about the DNA, what's that DNA sequence where they say it's like a giant word, like 3.4
DNA makes
billion
itself.
letters or
You're
something like that.
contradicting yourself, right? DNA is a thing that makes itself. Like, you're contradicting yourself already, saying nothing makes itself. That's stupid. Well, and then you point to DNA. DNA makes itself.
Listen, I'm saying it must have some intelligence. It must have a guiding principle. And the idea that it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsensical on its face, isn't it?
Okay, well, you have to be specific about that, because you literally just contradicted yourself.
There's a lot of people
that
want to take out a creative force behind it, right? With a we call God.
I know you've been lied to by creationists that abiogenesis is just some random process. It's not. If you want to categorize it, most people doing this research don't boil it down to such simplicity, because it's much more complicated.
To me, my friend.
It's a guided process in your terms, right? Through systems chemistry, autocatalysis, the physical chemical continuum, and a bunch of other things that are incorporated, geological processes, the environment, right? None of this is just random. It's
right,
all
so it is
serving
guided
a purpose.
You can't prove it's happening along the way at every
Holy
point.
shit, we've done it, dude. I'm inviting you to come do it with me.
I got a question. This is just ask: Is the vacuum of space 10 to the minus 14 James Tour?
What does that have to do with biogenesis? Right? This is just like a demonstration of your incredulity, right? Like, you're saying we can't do it. I invite you to come with me to do it for yourself, and you're pointing to the vacuum of space and its pressure, and making a joke about James Tour.
Sorry, yes, I made a James Tour joke. I apologize.
I'm inviting you to come do it with me.
I got a question. This is just ask: Is the vacuum of space 10 to the minus 14 James Tour?
What does that have to do with abiogenesis? Right? This is just like a demonstration of your incredulity. Right? Like you're saying we can't do it. I invite you to come with me to do it for yourself, and you're pointing to the vacuum of space and its pressure and making a joke about
I'm
James
sorry,
Torres.
guys.
Have to do with abiogenesis. Right? This is just like a demonstration of your incredulity. Right? Like you're saying we can't do it. I invite you to come with me to do it for yourself, and you're pointing to the vacuum of space and its pressure and making a process in your terms, right, through systems chemistry, autocatalysis, the physical chemical continuum, and a bunch of other things that are incorporated, geological processes, the environment, right? None of this is just random. It's
Right, so it
all
is guided
serving a
then.
purpose.
You can't prove it's happening along the way at every
Holy
point.
shit,
That's
we've done it,
ridiculous.
dude. I'm inviting you to come
I've
do
got
it
one
with
question.
me.
I got a question. This is just ask: is the vacuum of space 10 to the minus 14 James Tour?
What does that have to do with abiogenesis? Right? This is just like a demonstration of your incredulity. Right? Like you're saying we can't do it. I invite you to come with me to do it for yourself, and you're pointing to the vacuum of space and its pressure and making a joke about
I'm
James
sorry,
Torres.
yes, I made a James Tour joke. I apologize.
I know you don't want to learn anything. You just want to stay ignorant. Listen to people on the internet, freaking creationists of all, tell you how things are, and just be misinformed. Like, go ahead if that's how you want to live. It's just pure insanity to me. Like I've been open, and I've said it many times in many different servers. Anybody who wants to come do the abiogenesis process in a certain way, we can do it. And you could see with your own eyes, it all laid out right in front of you for you. You don't have to take my word or read the papers from the people that I give you the papers of that have done it. You can come do it with me and see it with your own eyes.
And these are the same people that brought us germ theory, though, so I'll doubt them very much. But the next guy I was going to look into, I think his name's David Belinsky. Have you heard of this guy, Jace?
Yeah. But
What do you think?
hold
What
on,
do you think of him?
right? So I said you can come do it with me, and you bring up germ theory because somebody, James Tor, someone has told you, a bunch of other people have told you on the internet that germ theory has been debunked. You can come see germs. You can come culture germs. You can come. We can do like transmission studies where you have
bacteria.
You have bacteria or viruses or any kind of pathogen, fungi. What the hell are they called? The ones that need a host. Parasites, there we go. Parasites, right? We could do all the different classes of pathogens, Andy, and you can see how the transmission works. You can culture these things. I'll go through every step of it with you, and you can see that saying germ theory has been debunked is the most absurdly stupid thing I've ever heard, man.
But you can't see a virus, though, can you?
Yes, you can. With cryo-EM, we could take pictures of viruses, Andy.
You can,
pictures.
you can take a spectromicrograph.
You're making that up.
It's not a spectrograph.
You're
It's
making that up.
cryogenic EM. Just look it up. Right?
According
We
to Sam
can
Bailey,
image
it's
down
just
to
pointing and declaring.
hydrogen atoms nowadays. We can image down to hydrogen atoms. Viruses are made of a whole bunch of different molecules that have hydrogen in them. So logically, they are bigger than hydrogen. So if we can take a picture of a hydrogen atom, we can take a picture of something bigger than that with this method. You can come and do it with me. We have one at the university and at the synchrotron nearby. We could do other things, right? And you could see a virus with your own. You could go through the process of getting the images, working out the structure, the whole thing. I'll take you straight through it.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear somebody talking about that the other day about some kind of dancing man or something like that. And then I thought it sounded familiar. Maybe I'd seen it, but my limited understanding was that we couldn't see a single atom. Right? I thought that was just.
Well, that's because you listen to people on the internet who are
no,
either
I looked
lying
into
to
it
you
for 20
or they're
years.
misinformed.
I
right?
thought they just had
Cryo-EM.
mathematical models, you know.
No, the hydrogen, there is like wave function spectroscopy, which is taking pictures of atoms in a different way. We are imaging like their wave-like nature. But with cryo-EM, right, in 2015, methods were worked out on how to remove the thermal noise, basically cool it down, cool the atoms down enough, because the big problem with taking a picture of an atom is that they have this thermal noise. They're always moving because they have energy. They have kinetic energy and a bunch of other different kinds of energy. So in 2015, it was worked out ways to cool it down using heat. liquid helium and lasers and stuff, where you can get down to almost 0 Kelvin, right? And that removes the majority of the thermal noise. And it's called a method called cryogenic electron microscopy. And we can image down to the hydrogen atoms in like proteins and nucleic acid. That's what I use it for. But other material scientists, even maybe James Tour, might do it with like nanostructures that they make, where they take pictures and stuff with it.
I had another question, but I can't remember it now. It can't have been good. Yeah, I had looked into that stuff for a long time.
Hey guys, what y'all doing?
Hey, Taylor.
What's going on?
We're just
Just
listening to
talking
this
about atoms.
bullshit.
We're trying to get a word in around Jayace while he's talking.
Oh,
And he's gone.
that's fine.
Well, I'm playing my game. I'm killing zombies. So.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Taylor-
just came
Taylor's
in here to
over.
ruin my conversation, and then he dips.
Oh, is he left now? Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was talking to that Ad Infinitum guy. Got him up against the fence, and then Jace comes in and waffles about, and I told Jace, "Stop talking. I don't want to talk to you." And then he just takes over the whole convo, breathing through the whole fucking thing, and then 10 minutes later, both of them leave. Okay.
Wow. Probably because I showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taylor, you missed it. It was so funny what Riggs and I
Man,
did.
tell them to come back. What they scared of?
Taylor, you missed it. So dude says that A-Biognss has nothing to do with probability and statistics, and he slams a book in the chat. So I download the book. And the first chapter has like, I don't know, like 10 sections on probability and statistics. It was so goofy. And Riggs is like, hey, do you know what the gambler's fallacy is? I was like, oh, is that when you post a source and expect someone not to read it?
That's actually a better definition than the one I gave.
I'm pretty sure that's
That
like,
was straight
I'm pretty sure the
goofy.
gambler's fallacy. I'm pretty sure the gambler's fallacy is like, say you're at the roulette table and it's been red 15 times in a row, and you're like, I'm due. You know what I'm saying? The I'm due thing. It's due to be black. You know, or the Jets
Jeremy
are due
knows
to
that
win.
real well.
Yeah, I thought that was called the
People do
sunk
this all-
cost fallacy. I thought you could call that the sunk cost fallacy. Like, I'm too far in. I gotta hit now.
No, that's
Is
when
it
you have too
similar?
much invested. That's when you have too much invested in something. So you just keep going. You're just like, fuck
I can't turn back now.
Yeah, right. But if all best gamblers quit right before they hit big, that's the sunk cost fallacy.
I'm just glad there's a lot of people out there that's exposed all that stuff. People like Stefan Lenker, very like just God bless them, basically, because, and usually, by the way, they do have a higher thing, you know, like Taylor's obviously a God-fearing person, same as James Tour and all the rest of it. That's usually the case, though, isn't it? They hold to a higher thing than man, basically. And
Well, one thing I've noticed about all the people who speak out, even if they do have, they're God-fearing or whatever, they let the truth lead their arguments. Instead of leading with rhetoric, they're just like, well, there's this process and then this process, and then all these things had to happen at once. And, you would need this condition before this happened and this next step. And then where did the information come? Like it's just logical, whereas the other side is just telling you, well, we made a totally unnatural cell that doesn't match anything else in nature, but it assembles. I'm like, okay, but where'd the information come from? How are you making anything coherent out of it?
I feel like you could destroy evolution just with a good chicken and egg argument, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you can dismiss it up front, but at the same time, like, they're essentially building their own straw man by saying, well, the proto cell and we can do this and we can do that and we can do all these things that were necessary for evolution, but they're just writing their own story at that point.
Yeah, they have faith in something they've never seen happen. They have faith it happens.
Yeah, I thought that was really strange, that interaction, because initially the claim was that probability and statistics had nothing to do with it, and I pointed that out, and then, he picked up his book, I guess, and he's like, yeah, but it says energy directed. Riggs, you know what I'm talking about? Where he's like, it says energy directed. So that somehow removes all of the, 10 sections on probability.
Yeah, so what? Even if it's not energy directed, your probabilities are based on whatever the mechanism is. We're not attacking the mechanism.
There's a probability
We're attacking
factor.
the
It's so
probability.
the probability factor is so important that we're going to open the book with it and have 40 pages on it? 67 pages on it?
These guys think there's a probability that if you put an apple in a sealed container where no energy or an isolated system, they think that if you put an apple in that and then it erodes, degrades over time, they think that someday it's going to become an apple again.
An apple tree.
Wait, no, it would
Just an
become an
apple.
F-22 if you did it enough times. You know, you give enough apples like the monkey typewriter, that apple would turn into an F-22, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I actually believe in the typewriter monkey thing because the Library of Babel is kind of like works off that principle.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, no shot.
That's Levelist's favorite part, guys.
Even
Why
with
were they
infinite
knocking
time,
my
you're
solar
not getting all
panels?
the
Where
words
were you
straight
earlier when
through.
they were knocking my solar panels?
Hold on, I wanted to say something quick to Riggs. Like, what there is no financial incentive for them to prove their own theories and studies wrong, right? If they did, they wouldn't get any more funding. So I think that like inside of these scientists, like there's a inner monologue where they're trying to justify their education and their careers and their scientific literature, the things that they're trying to figure out. They have a deep seated need for what they're doing to be correct.
Hey, there's your sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah,
Well, because
now
if it's
that
not,
is
what
a
is that?
sunk cost fallacy.
What does it say about all the education, all the time spent arguing, and if he was to actually prove that what he's doing is incorrect, then he wasted a bunch of money and time and a lot of things basically.
Yeah, I was liking that Belinsky character because I've only watched a couple of bits and bobs on him, and I was going to buy a book they did called Newton's Gift or something like that, but I haven't bought it yet. So because I'm still paying for this computer, so.
Dude, stop giving into the whole book and paper thing, bro. Get an audio book or an ebook or something.
Oh yeah, I love audiobooks, Jeremy. That would be my first option, but yeah, I couldn't find that particular book in an audio version, so I was going to buy the book. But anyway, oh shit, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, that was it. I clicked on him the other day, and it was his. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched the first 10 minutes of it, whatever. He was debating Christopher Hitchens, and he's opening. He went into a little bit of the French Revolution, and I was like, he's my guy. He's my guy, because he was like, because I always talk about how, they were gonna have a 10-day week or some shit. Like, I mean, they really, it was sold to the people as the sort of the end of superstition and the age of reason. And they come up to a building like Notre Dame, and they're like, oh, it's a nice thing. That what should we call that? We'll call it the Building of Reason. I'm not even joking. I'm like, oh, this is my guy. I've got to buy a book from that guy. Because when he first was challenging evolution, or at least he was saying it was dumb, like nobody was saying that shit. I don't think in the 90s, right? I'm trying to think somebody else who was, because I don't think he's particularly religious either. Yeah, so I understand there's probably some religious folks out there who were like, no, we don't agree with it. But I don't think he's religious. I think he's a maths professor. Could be wrong about that, but anyway, he's one of those people that you can tell he's very intelligent, but he's a bit like Feynman, in that when you listen to him, you're like, oh, he just sounds like he could live next door. Like, like he's just very down to earth.
Was that you or me that killed the room, Andy?
You what, dude?
It was Jeremy.
Oh, it was Andy. It was Andy. Let's be clear.
Oh, did I kill the chat? Sorry, everybody.
I was
Now,
trying to
where
figure
were
out
you
which
earlier
one
when
of
they
us.
were dissing my solar panels, Levelist?
Who's dissing solar?
They always do it to me, and you're never around. You're like the opposite of Clark Kent.
Yeah, it's been. I don't like listening to arguments all day long. I've been trying to keep my time in here to a minimum. 2 days in a row. The second I pop in, I listen to the middle of Galley like destroying the same guy, and it makes me go back and listen to it on the YouTube to get the full gist of the full conversation.
It's very hard. Like, I know points don't get addressed. Like, yo, I know you want to go on to another thing, but focus on my point. We should really do lead and follow. I honestly think that would help a lot if, like, spend 5 minutes, let me lead you all over the place. Yes or no, let me interrupt you, all that for like 5 minutes, and then I'll do the same. You can lead me wherever you want. That would be so much more fruitful, I think. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's like an epidemic of people basically refusing to answer direct questions.
Yeah, like if we're both talking and we're disagreeing and we're arguing and debating it the whole time, like I'm going to try to go onto my thing and you're going to try to go onto your thing. And then we're going to be saying, why didn't you address my point or answer my question? Where if you just let people lead and follow, I feel like more progress would get made. It'd be easier. It wouldn't be as crazy. You'd get more information.
I vividly remember being like maybe 8 years old, and I did something to piss my father off, and he sat me down. He's like, "Why did you do that?" And my version of not answering the question when I was 8 was just saying, "I don't know." Like with mom saying, "I don't know," gets you out of it. My father's like, "You don't know why you did what you did? Well, who can I ask to find out why you did what you did other than you?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." He's like, "All right, well, why don't you go to your room and you don't even get dinner tonight until you can figure out why you did what you did. I need an answer from you. I don't even care if you fucking lie, but you're going to tell me why you did what you did." So like when growing up that way, like having to answer questions from 8 years old on to coming into these conversations and nobody's answering questions, I want to pull my fucking hair out, dude. Like I can't handle it.
Yo, you showed me, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, Levelist, with the GMOs and what they're doing with animals. It's like, how did we get to where we got? How did we get to just where we got with the amount of stuff they crank into these cows?
Dude, it's basically an air pill, and they pop it right into the ear of the sheep and the cows, and it's a time delay release. And as soon as it gets in their ears, their body just starts fucking pumping like weight on. They just start swelling and
it's not real weight. It's like infection. It's pus. It's not like fat. It's not like muscle. It's growth. It's weight, but it's not like good weight. And if if your cow weighs 50% more, of course you can sell it for more, but it's not 50% more meat.
Right. That's
wild.
But like seeing the graph, like seeing when the FDA officially approved it, 57, right? And then I showed you that graph of the obesity rates in America. Like if you can't draw a correlation between a growth hormone and steroid together being injected into the ear of an animal, and then humans consuming that animal, and then they themselves begin exhibiting the same exact signs that the drug was designed for the livestock, but in the human, you just see these fat people, like they're working out, they're eating the same, like, don't get me wrong, there are fat people that only eat donuts all day long, but I know quite a few fat people that don't eat any more calories than anybody else, but yet they
instead of butter, they use vegetable oils.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that attributes to it, but what I think is going on is that drug is doing what it was doing in the livestock, but is doing it in the human. The human's not like the animal. Those animals that get injected with the growth hormone, they don't necessarily eat any more food than the ones that don't, but their reactions in their body causes them to gain weight more. That's what the drug is actually designed to do. Not health, not enough. Yeah, it's a steroid. It's what bodybuilders are using, but they're putting in the animals, and then all the fucking humans that are consuming that food are exhibiting the same exact signs as the livestock. It's like I thought it was crazy.
Well, you said like anyone can't see the correlation. That reminds me of like the studies that said babies who have a fever of 102 or more for a couple days have a higher chance of having autism, right? So like if they had studies that I saw where babies who had a fever of 102 or higher for multiple days had a higher rate of developing autism later. And then I saw separate studies that said babies who take certain vaccines had a higher chance of having 102 or higher fevers. But you can't link those two things, even though it says, hey, these vaccines cause a fever of 102 or higher, and babies who have a fever of 102 or higher have a higher chance of having autism. For some reason, people are like, oh, well, I can't put those two together. And I completely understand why those studies are separate. It's because if you're doing one of those studies, you're not getting funding to correlate the two. You're actually probably going to get defunded if you try to correlate the two.
Yeah, because I've actually heard the opposite. A non-vaccine induced fever where your body gets up that high is actually good for you. It's supposed to be killing off the things in your body. Like a lot of people, when they take Tylenol, when they have a headache or whatever, your body's trying to take care of it itself. You're supposed to like fight through the headache basically, or fight through the high fever, and then you come out better on the other side is kind of what I've been told. But you're saying that
for babies, though? Are you talking about babies?
Yeah,
like regular?
I mean, I wouldn't know.
My method with the fever is I wrap my head in like a towel and I try to sweat harder if I get a fever. I go full into it. I put on like a bunch of clothes, get under a blanket. I like full sweat if I have a fever.
Yeah, that's how I've been told to deal with it. But when's the last time? I literally can't ever remember that ever happening to me. Maybe when I was like 20 years old.
Yeah, someone close to me just had a stroke. Well, someone who used to be my next door neighbor just had a stroke, and I was like, oof. And I was holding back a little bit because you sort of want to be, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that and that kind of thing. But inside, I was like, is it vaccine related?
Did he get the jab?
Yeah, because at the time, like I would post in like a maniac on Facebook, and people, you could feel it, like were getting pissed off. I mean, people were actually saying they didn't want to see all that kind of thing as well. And then my brother sent my oldest brother sent my mum a message saying, tell him to stop posting all that fucking garbage or something like that. So I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And then,
dude, sorry, go ahead.
And then I saw this guy, and I'd go around to their house because they was next door neighbors, and they sort of were a bit. They weren't directly. How can I say? There was just sort of. You know how people are passive aggressive, and it was just like they.
What, you're not vaccinated?
Me? Oh no, I didn't get anything.
No. I'm saying that's kind of the reaction. Like, what, you think it's a conspiracy?
Yeah, it was sort of like that. It's like, what do you know? What do you know? You're not an expert. You're not that kind of.
Dude. Always the pushback.
Oh yeah, I did kind of
always the
hear that.
cognitive
What, you watch
dissonance.
some James Tor videos, Eddie? What, you watch some James Tor that you think you know everything? Like, okay, relax, bud.
The funny thing about that is, as